Hello and welcome to Henry Crank. In this short video we're going to have a look at arguably two of the most famous military rifles to come out of Britain, the SMLE and the No.4 Lee Enfield. Before we have a look at the SMLE, a little bit of history. In 1904 the short magazine Lee Enfield SMLE was introduced and it replaced its longer cousin, the magazine Lee Enfield, or MLE, which had been used during the Boer War. This in turn replaced something called the Lee Metford. Very similar in terms of design. It utilised a bolt design by James Paris Lee and rifling pioneered by William Metford. Originally intended to use black powder, the rifle worked perfectly fine until the late 1800s when experiments were made to replace the black powder in the cartridges with new smokeless propellants coming onto the scene. The increased heat and pressure in the barrel caused by these new smokeless powders caused Metford's rifling to wear out after only several thousand rounds. A little bit of a problem in a military rifle. Lee's bolt design, however, was so good that it was picked up by the people at the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield. They designed newfangled rifling, marrying this bolt design of James Paris Lee with this newfangled rifling and a barrel from the people at Enfield. Not only solved the problem, but also coined the name that we still live with today, Lee Enfield. So let's take a quick look at this, which is the Mark III, arguably the most famous of the SMLEs. It acquired the nickname of SMLE, as soldiers said the letters SMLE over and over and over and over again, and very quickly it went from SMLE to SMLE. Two of the things that made Lee's bolt design so good were this. The magazine here held 10 rounds, and although it was detachable, it was intended that you would load the rounds through the top with the use of a stripper clip like this, or with the magazine cut off you could load a single round at a time. The second thing that made it so good was the throw of the bolt. That is the distance that the bolt would come back once it had been fired and you needed to put a new round into the chamber. This allowed British soldiers to have their eyes on the target, fire a round and operate the bolt without moving their heads. And they could keep doing this as long as there were rounds in the magazine. Now don't worry, those are drill rounds. This resulted in a very, very high rate of fire. Average British soldiers could get around 20 to 30 aimed shots a minute off at the beginning of the First World War. And so much so that German troops actually reported encountering British soldiers armed with machine guns when in fact they just bumped into British troops, well-trained British troops, armed with the SMLE. Now in 1915 Britain introduced something called the Mark III Star, and that was because it was deemed, the Mark III that is, was deemed too expensive and complicated to make during the height of a world war. So they deleted a couple of things from the gun, namely the magazine cutoff here and the long-range volley sights. Basically it was all an attempt to make it cheaper, easier and quicker to produce, and some 17 million were made over its life, so they needed to make quite a lot of them. And it was used by British soldiers throughout the First World War right into the Second World War as well. And in the late 1930s, obviously the storm clouds of war are gathering again over Europe, and the increased demand for rifles caused the British Army to look at something slightly new, and that resulted in 1941 with them adopting this, which is the No.4 Mark I. Now essentially it's the same bolt design, same magazine as we've seen in the Mark III used in the First World War, but this time you'll notice that the barrel protrudes from the stock, unlike the stubby nose of the SMLE. Now the bolt design is nigh on identical, it's just made in such a way that it's a little bit stronger and a little bit quicker to produce. And in 1942, much like the First World War, we introduced a No.4 Mark I Star. Again, this was just an attempt to make things easier and simpler to produce during a war. So they got rid of things like these complicated sights at the rear for much simpler ones. And this particular rifle served British soldiers right through the Second World War, on into Korea and into the 1950s, in some cases in the 1960s, until it was replaced by the SLR. It was kept as a drill rifle for a long time, and a sniper variant was used into the 1990s. Altogether, a very, very long service life between these two rifles, and here at Henry Crank you can see behind me we've got quite a large selection of them. Each of these rifles are individually photographed and described on the website, so why not head there after this video and have a look at them. We offer deactivated variants as well as live firearms, catering for collectors and shooters with an historical interest. We do get regular deliveries of these, so we usually have plenty in stock. And if you do have any more questions about our Enfield range, pick up the phone, give us a call, or drop us an email, and we'll do our best to help you out. We'll see you in the next video.